Alright, guys, I'm gonna do the problems on the study guide for you and record them. And you guys can take a look. So if you have any problems, I would take a look at this video. Alright, so if you remember, our perfect square roots are gonna start with 4, right? 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7. Alright, so let's start with the first one, and 4 is going to go into it. So sometimes, guys, it's just kind of like a guess and check until you figure out which of these numbers. You always want to get the biggest one, right? Now remember, 4 is going to come out as a 2. If there's a number outside of it, you are going to multiply it. So it's going to be 4 times 2. So my final answer is going to be 8 square root of 15. Okay. Second one, we're multiplying. Remember, we do the outside and the inside. Now notice this is a perfect square. So this means that the whole thing comes out. Okay, so now there's nothing left in the radical. You're just going to have an integer. 12 times 4 would be 48. Okay, so again, remember, if there's a perfect square here, you will never have a radical left over. Now with division, first thing I always try to do is simplify these before I try to rationalize, because remember what we talked about in class, you can't have a radical on the bottom, okay? So 2 does go into 80 40 times. It still stays under the radical, but now we don't have a fraction. So we're going to break down 40 with a 4 and a 10. And the square root of 4 would be 2 radical 10. Okay. Next problem is going to be 36 and 49. If you'll notice, these are both perfect squares, okay? So the square root of 36 will be 6. The square root of 49 will be 7. No radical on the bottom. Can't simplify. Done. Pretty simple problem. Alright, adding and subtracting. Remember, we have to have the same radical underneath. In this case, it's going to be a variable x. So we're going to keep the x, and then we're going to subtract the coefficients. So 4 minus 5 is going to be negative 1. Or you could just write it as this one. Either answer would be acceptable, okay? Alright, next one. Another multiplication like number 2. Outside, 8 times 7. Inside, 6 times 5. Now, 30 is a pretty big number. However, none of these numbers go into it. So we're done. Alright. Let's take a look at the next set. Another multiplication. 6 times 3 would be 18, right? 8 times 9 is 72. Okay, I'm going to break down 72. Now, 72, pretty big number. 36 goes into it 2 times. So that would be 36 and 2, 18, right? The 36 comes out as a 6, right? So 8 times 6 would be 108. Radical 2. There was a couple of different ways you could have done that problem. You could have done the square root of 9 first, and maybe it would have cut down on all these big numbers. But again, you know, there's always a couple of different ways you could do a math problem. And I always say, hey, if you get the right answer at the end, that's what counts the most, all right? 8. Outside, 2 goes in the 16, 8 times, okay? Now 5 goes into 30, 6 times, right? So that's going to be under the radical. Now if you look at the variables, 5, remember there's a 1 there. When you're dividing, and again it's under the radical, so you could do this. You're going to subtract the exponents. So that's going to be 4. Okay. Now let's see what we can do with this. Well, 6, nothing goes into 6. However, groups of 2. So I have 2 groups of 2 with 4, right? So I could take 2 of them out. So that would be 8x squared, and the 6 stays in. Okay. Alright, number 9. I'm going to break down both of these individually because I want to find a radical. In this case, it's going to be a number, not a letter. Alright. So let's start with 60. So 60 has a 4 in it and a 15. 4 comes out as a 2, right? So that would be 3 times 2 is radical 15. 3 times 2 is 6, so that's 6 radical 15. Alright, now this one, 6 radical 15, that can't be broken down. So basically what we're doing is we're just subtracting the same thing by the same thing, which would just be a big fat 0. Okay? Alright, next one. X cubed, we're multiplying, right? So 3 times 2 is 6. X cubed times x is x to the 4th. And you know you can take 2 groups of x's out. So that's going to be x squared. And we're done, alright? Number 11, we're going to break down everything. And I think all of these numbers have a perfect square in it. So the first one is 27, which would be 9 and 3. Square root of 9 is 3. So we have 3 radical 3. Okay, 48. What does 48 have in it? It has a 4. However, it also has a 16, which is bigger. Again, you always want to get the biggest one. Okay? Alright, so the square root of 16 is 4. Radical 3. And then I'm going to break down 8 as a 4 and a 2. Square root of 4 is 2 radical 2. And this is a little bit like grouping like terms, alright? So we could only group these two. So this would be 7 radical 3 plus 2 radical 2. Okay? And then the last one. Last one's division. Alright? Now, You'll notice these are even numbers, so I want to simplify this first before I see if I have to do that rationalization that we learned about. Alright, so since they're even numbers, half of 10 is 5. Half of 6 is 3. We still have a radical on the bottom, so we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by radical 3, right? Okay, so this is just going to become the square root of 9 over 5 times 3 is 15. And the square root of 9 is 3. No radical on the bottom. 15 cannot be broken down. So we are done with that one. Alright. Okay, I'm going to post this on It's Learning. I'm going to do the next group of problems. Okay, and I'll finish up this and have everything posted for you.